at a time when we have the World Economic Forum, also at Davos, and part of the key discussions, which we shall later on see in the show ahead, it's to do with Africa's debt. Because as of last year, 2020, as of 2022, Africa's debt stood at around $1 trillion US. So part of the key discussion. So we want to understand how do these really reconcile, most especially when it comes to, coming to harmony, in terms of what is being discussed at the Davos vis-a-vis the G77 plus China. But of course, this has been causing some critics, saying, countries after leaving the G77 or the non-alignment movement that we had last week, and they go be a part of the Davos, and you find that there is a little bit of conflicting principles in some sort of a way, and that could kind of hinder some of the proposed projections for these particular sittings. But of course, let's wait and see what this comes about. But it's quite a tough situation for Africa as debt, increasing interest rates globally. So all these aspects which I feel need to be put into a bit of great consideration. But of course, we have both long-term and short-term benefits of these particular ones, because you may be asking yourself, what does the G77 plus China mean to me? Well, what does it mean to a normal individual? Both long-term and short-term. I mean, the short-term perspectives, we saw the accommodations that were booked, the long-term comes in with the infrastructure perspectives. And we have seen, according to the Ministry of Transport, saying part of the locals were contracted to actually establish tourism routes, local contractors. So seeing all those long-term benefits that are coming along.
Well, of course, starting from, before we go to the G77, maybe from now, I believe, regarding, because as I had someone talk about the fact that some delegates were not able, some heads of state were not able to come to Uganda because of the presumed insecurity that was happening in Uganda. Yeah.
Oh no, of course.
But of course, for those that came in, can attest and witness that at least they can witness that at least we are a very hospitable country.
Yeah.
We are really rich when it comes to hospitality. I must commend Uganda for that. We are really rich with the people. People were smiling on the roads. I don't know if you took in practice what they asked of you, but of course, it has really helped us create a good image out there, regardless of what people have been portraying Ghana to be like. But of course, for now, at least we are safe, regardless of what is happening in our very own country. But of course, with that, I know, and of course, it has created a whole perspective of the uniqueness that we have as a country, Uganda, and of course when it comes to tourism and all that. So definitely, I heard actually that they gave scholarships for some youth. The Abidjan, certainly the Youth and Women Forum. At least they're planning to give some scholarships to some of the youth from Uganda to Abidjan.
Wow, that is
at least that is what I can feel like we've achieved out of this, and hoping that the G77 plus we shall achieve something, shall have something that we also take.
Yeah. Absolutely. Exactly 14 minutes past 7. Let's at this point in time take a look at what's making headlines that is into the praise. Well, as we kickstart off here, I'll start with a new vision. G77 demands fair loan conditions. And of course, now members want representation at the UN Security Council. And back here, we see the Chamber Deputy VC on the run over alleged defilement, and 50 investors to set up multi-billion projects here as a result of the sittings.
Well, of course, in the Daily Monitor, queries after lawyer shoots guard dead. Yeah. Well, and of course, the return of Cecilia Gual's body kicks off week-long activities, and of course, we're going to be honoring the late Cecilia Gual. And of course, NAM State decry visa ban for UN meetings, and of course, Ugandans using Kenyan mortuaries. What is happening? And of course, that and more when you get yourself a copy of the Daily Monitor. Of course, tasks ahead as the Uganda takes over G77 leadership. So we took over the NAM chairmanship, and of course, we're also taking now the G77. So it's a huge responsibility on our head, shoulder as Ugandans, and we believe we're going to have impact at the end of this.
Absolutely. It's quite a big one there. And of course, further here in the New Vision, we see together we can end the gender gap in Africa, says the First Lady here. And over 50 billion foreign investors to set up multi-billion-dollar projects in the country, Uganda. And Namibian Deputy Prime Minister calls upon creating opportunities for the young people, of course, the youth. Which never seem to be represented for this year's NAM. However much there was a creation of their space, we have the women and youth, but for 20,
they wanted to participate.
Yeah, for 20, yes, they wanted to be inclusive. There is space for them, but it wasn't prioritized for the 2024.
Well, of course, now that we have the chairmanship, at least we shall be included.
Probably this could be part the youth initiatives post NAM, post G77.
Yes. Well, of course, in the East African friends again, despite apparent throwing of the relations between Kenya and Uganda, there are sticking points in the fuel import talks. And of course, Kampala wants a license for UNOC. No issues also were happening. But of course, Nairobi says Ugandan marketer should embrace competition from Kenyan companies. And there are cases, and there are cases in court. And of course, test for democracy as the 19 African states go to polls. Yeah, and of course, IGAD reads riot act to Sudanese generals. Yeah, that is what is happening in the East African from Uganda. Lots. And of course, the other side of Kenyan G2G oil deal, and of course, IMF warns import scheme is distorting current market, that is of the oil. Yeah.
And seeing here, court orders arrest of Chinese investor over alleged fraud. And the city lawyer arrested over shooting. That is 900 others that have been detained. And Ugandan runs for the United States Congress here. This is Quincy Barebe. Here you can find out further details there. And still as we proceed, UNFPA, Iceland Embassy, that is in 11.4 billion, that is 11.4 billion Uganda shillings drive to end fistula. You can also get that when you find your copy of the New Vision. And First Lady commends church for trainings. And of course, this is in line. The First Lady said that Uganda had previously witnessed instances of inadequate accountability, that is in certain churches, which has had a negative impact on the congregations. However, she says with the church taking the initiative to train leaders, posterity promises better.
And of course, see in the comment section, NAM and G77 summits to spur the MICE growth. That is the meetings, incentives, conferences and events project, not project, actual initiative that the Ministry of Tourism and the Uganda Tourism Board have put in place for us to strategize ourselves as a destination for conferences and events.
Absolutely. And in the comment section here, somebody says prioritize measures to safeguard oil infrastructure, and coming into ideological clarity, still key in a fast-changing world. Okay, still in the New Vision and economic impact here of the international conferences. And somebody here still in the comment is trying to highlight the lessons from China's transformation of vocational education. All right, I guess those are some part of the key discussions that will be put across, most especially when it comes to technology transfer in particular. for developing countries. Now we see here business tips from the 19th NAM Summit. When you grab yourself a copy, you'll be able to find those tips, what really are. And I can see John Walugembe, the CEO, the Executive Director of the Small and Intermediary Enterprises, Federation for Small and Intermediary Enterprises, says benefits go beyond monetary gains. So what is that? Long-term perspectives here as he's trying to put out this out there.
Well, of course, the IMF in East Africa, the IMF reviews a $400 million exposure in Kenyan fuel import deal. Well, the International Monetary Fund has estimated the taxpayers' exposure to the fuel import scheme at around $400 million to the fuel, actually, which means the government to government, G to G, deal is not risk-free to as stated. So that is what is happening around East Africa. And of course, UK is not alone in the asylum headache. Yes, so DRC opposition calls for protests. And of course, democracy on trial in Africa as 19 countries hold polls in the coming months. And of course, most of the terms, 4 terms here, so most African countries are having, and of course, economic wars piles pressure on Ethiopia as it settles in BRICS. Yeah, it was also one of the countries that were planning to join the BRICS. And of course, as Kenya sets June target to list the Kenyan Airways strategic investor. Yes, that is when you get yourself a copy of the East African. Yes, of course, when you look at the opinion, frequent spats will reserve the East African community growth drive. Yeah, of course, yeah, that is what is happening. Of course, yeah, and of course, how Morocco is avoiding spagots to cash in on the south migration. That is what is happening in East Africa. If you get the copy of the East African right there. So definitely, well, of course, Makerere equips refugees with entrepreneurship skills. Yeah, that is Makerere University right there doing tremendous. Yeah, and of course, the new era in the education. Well, of course, in the 2019, a new curriculum commenced with the training sessions to enrich teachers around Uganda with knowledge on how to handle the new lower competency-based curriculum. Of course, many teachers who were trained welcome the change from the knowledge-based curriculum to the new lower competence-based curriculum with 2 hands. So it's more hands-on, more practical, the new curriculum. Yeah, and of course, some schools are improvising the international, the Ugandan curriculum, you know, and because the international is a bit more practical than ours, which is theoretical at one point or the other. Of course, misinformation tops global risks in 2024. That is according to the World Economic Forum report as it's ongoing. Yeah, of course, the misinformation, extreme weather tops global risks in 2024, according to the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report. Yeah, so the global, we're anticipating that if you get a copy of Daily Monitor. Now, can the president who vowed war bring peace to DRC? Yes, and of course, as we were talking about some African countries going to polls, well, DRC is among those that are going to be heading to polls in the coming months. So, of course, Russia claims capture of the village in the eastern Ukraine, of course, still ongoing, the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine away from Palestine and Israel. And of course, that was also addressed during the NAM summit. And of course, authorities probe China's school fire. Of course, there was a fire that happened over the weekend, definitely claiming some lives. Yeah, and of course, the Hamas says Gaza deaths top to 25,000. 25,000. That's a huge number of people right there. So you can get your copy of the Daily Monitor if you want to get what is happening. Do or die for Ghana Ivory Coast. And of course, for those that have been following up with the AFCON, the AFCON 2023, and of course now Rapid Stun Avengers Full Cup trophy. And of course, that is also for football right there.
And that brings us to the end of the press brief. Let's take a break. And when we return, we have Caribbean South Africa and definitely international updates. Stick around.